Thank you very much. Good morning and good afternoon, fellow colleagues. My name is Dr. Kgomotso Makhaola, and I'm the Senior Science Manager at ASLM. I'm delighted to welcome you to the inaugural event of the ASLM Science Webinar Series. In addition to our other educational and knowledge sharing initiatives, we will be hosting this webinar series every 2 months for a start. The primary goal of this series is to promote the exchange of scientific knowledge that informs policies and guides evidence-based solutions in laboratory medicine across the African continent and beyond. Can go to next. So this is what we are going to be talking about by the end of today's presentation. We expect that you should be able to understand the mandate of AJLM and its alignment with ASLM's vision, clearly grasp the reasons for publishing with AJLM, be aware of the general expectations when preparing a scientific manuscript for publication, know how to become a member or an ambassador of ASLM. Coming to ASLM, this is a Pan-African Laboratory Medicine Association. Our vision at ASLM is to achieve a healthier Africa through access to quality laboratory services for all. As laboratory professionals, the services we provide are centered around data and information. A laboratorian takes human blood and converts it into numbers, which then inform decisions about patient care. Beyond individual patient care, we at ASLM see a significant opportunity in utilizing laboratory data. By analyzing this data, we can enhance service delivery, assess the impact of our programs, and inform policies, interventions, and innovations in diagnostics and therapeutics. Therefore, our goal is to advance the laboratory profession, practice, science, and network. ASLM positions itself as Africa's lab voice, and we achieve this through 4 strategic priorities. The first one being to refine and improve ASLM's core technical strengths through education, training, and knowledge sharing. And that is the reason we are here today and why AJLM was established as a gold open access journal. And you'll hear more about this in the coming slides. The second priority is to build and organize the laboratory profession, defining its role beyond diagnostics to advance science and innovation in laboratory medicine in Africa. We support networking and collaboration, building capacity on issues like ethical considerations for implementation science. The third priority of ASLM is innovation and growing to staying relevant in the ever-evolving field of laboratory medicine. And finally, investing in our people to ensure sustained progress and excellence. These priorities help us fulfill our mission and vision for a healthier Africa. Shown here is a preview of some topics we will cover in our science webinar series. We aim to keep you engaged by inviting you to suggest the topics. Our pool of speakers will include experts from ASLM and similar institutions, research and academia, as well as industry professionals. As we focus on building the next generation of laboratory scientists, we will also showcase their work alongside their mentors and field experts. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not the speaker for today, and I have the pleasure to introduce Professor Rajiv Erasmus, who is our editor-in-chief for AJLM. Professor Erasmus is currently an emeritus professor at Stellenbosch University, and an adjunct professor in the Department of Pathology in the University of Botswana, as well as the cardiometabolic health at the Cape Peninsula University in Cape Town, South Africa. You have to take me for this one. Prof. Erasmus is learned, with over 300 peer-reviewed publications, with an age index of 44. It's your assignment, or you will ask him later what that means. He has served in more than 30 scientific committees, organized and facilitated more than 30 international workshops, as well as mentoring and graduating more than 50 students of medicine, laboratory, and public health. And we are still counting. Professor Erasmus will be followed by Mrs. Bethanie Raymer, who has been the managing editor for AJLM since 2014. Previously, she worked for over a decade at Vanderbilt University Medical Center in the US, where she helped researchers publish an extensive body of work from long-term cohort studies of the molecular and genetic epidemiology of cancer and chronic diseases. She holds a bachelor's degree in theoretical linguistics and German, as well as certificates in medical editing and human subjects research. At this time, I'll be handing over to Professor Erasmus. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Makhaola, for that great introduction. And it's a great pleasure to be here amongst all my colleagues and friends from all over Africa. Some of you guys know me, and I think we have interacted in many conferences over the last 20 years. So I will be talking about the African Journal of Lab Medicine, and I am really privileged to be the editor-in-chief and to thank the African Society of Lab Medicine in having that confidence in leading this eminent journal, which is one of its kind in continental Africa. So it was founded in 2011 along with the Africa Society of Lab Medicine. As Dr. Makhaola said, it's an open access journal, which means that you don't need to pay anything to read it. It's also, you are also free to publish it, so there are no article processing charges. And I think very importantly, once your paper is published, you have the copyright. So neither the publisher nor ASLM has the copyright to your article. And once the article has undergone the technical process, which Mrs. Brahma will talk about later, it undergoes a double-blind process. And I think it's important for us to just look at what type of manuscripts do we publish. So AJLM publishes original research, review articles, opinion papers, editorials, case studies. And I think what is also unique about AJLM is that it also publishes lessons from the field, as well as also publishing special issues and collections from time to time. It has a frequency of one issue per year, and it's important for us to note that over the years, the African Journal of Lab Medicine has been expanding at a very rapid rate. And if you look at what is our scope, you will see that it is very broad in the area of lab medicine. And these actually range from clinical chemistry, drug monitoring and toxicology, infectious diseases, diagnostics, hematopathology, policy and practice as related to lab medicine, non-communicable diseases, And the last three are recent additions that the AJLM will be joining to its scope of publishing. And these include emerging technologies, anatomic pathology, and genomics. Next slide. So if we look at the AJLM metrics, I did say that we have been expanding and growing at a steady pace. And on the left-hand corner, you can actually see the number of articles that have been published. And what is really great is that majority of these articles are coming from low-income countries. Nevertheless, we also have quite a few number of articles from middle-income countries. So there's definitely a great interest in AJLM, and we want to thank all our potential authors from all over Africa for making this journal one of the greatest in Africa. And so if I just continue with the metrics, AJLM is one of the very few lab medicine journals. In fact, as far as I know, is the only one of its kind on the African continent. And what I think is something that we have remarkably achieved is an impact factor of 1. And our vision is to increase it to 2 in the next 2 to 3 years. It has a site score index of 1.7, and it has a H5 index of 16. Now, you might be wondering what these indexes are. They are actually indexes that have been created by 2 databases, Scopus as well as the one from Clavariate. And if you look at the total number of papers that have been published in the last 5 to 6 years, they exceed 300, and we have more than 2,000 citations, as well as 2 million downloads. I meant 2,000 cross-references. So I will now hand over to Mrs. Brahma, who's going to really talk on the technical details with respect to submitting research for publications. Over to you, Mrs. Brahma.
Thanks so much, Prof. And thank you also to Dr. Makhaola for that wonderful introduction. And also thanks to everyone attending. We're so excited to be having this. This is a topic we've wanted to present on for quite a long time. And the reason that we're having this today is because we have a very high pre-review rejection rate. And what that means is of all of the submissions that are, all of the articles that are submitted to AJLM, only about 30% actually make it through to peer review. So about 70% actually are rejected before they ever get to peer reviewers for various reasons. And the bottom left of your screen there sort of demonstrates how those have changed. We track those. And we categorize them into 3 basic categories: administrative reasons, scientific and technical reasons. And over on the right side of your screen, you can see science and technical reasons make up about 70% approximately of why we're rejecting. Those have to do with ethics, scope, writing, etc. And then about 40%, actually upwards of 40% over the last 3 years are for administrative reasons. And you can see those don't add up to 100 because we record up to 3 reasons, and there may be several administrative reasons for one submission, for example. So they don't add up. But over the last 3 years, it's been more than 40% of submissions have an administrative reason for being rejected, and that's what we'd like to focus on today. So what's on your screen right now is our editorial workflow. This is what happens after you submit. There's at least 4 different people who look at it. So the bubbles on the left side are all of the different people who take a look. So the publisher has people who check. Then there's a technical editor who looks at certain things. Then it gets to the editor-in-chief and the person who's actually going to handle it through peer review. So what we want to focus on today is that orange box at the top. Those are the administrative reasons that you might get your submission rejected without peer review. And we chose this because it's kind of the low-hanging fruit. All of the things that you might be rejected for here, or most of them, are things that we can fix very easily. So we'd really love to wipe out that 40% or at least lower it significantly. So what we're going to focus on today is completing the publisher's required submission form, which we refer to as the ADCL form. And I'll talk about what the full name for that is in a minute. We're going to take a look at how to use the online submission platform, and we'll also take a look at the required files and information that we need. So this is where you'll find, we're going to start with the submission form, because that is, my recommendation is that's where you start. If you're considering submitting to AJLM, start with that form. So on the left-hand side of your screen is a partial screenshot of our homepage. If you hover over the authors selection in the navigation menu, there'll be a pop-up, and then you click on submission guidelines, and that will take you to our submission guidelines page. And on the far right, if you click on compulsory forms, that will take you to the page where you can find the ADCL form. So you scroll down a little bit, and that screenshot on the lower half of this slide, where it says compulsory forms, there's a link, and you can see the full name of that form is Authorship Disclosure Statements Copyright and License Agreement Form, which is a really long name and quite a mouthful, and that is why we refer to it as the ADCL form. And I've put our URL is there on the bottom of the page. That's where you would start with this. So this is what the form looks like, or the first page of it in any case. It is 10 pages long, which can be a little bit intimidating. It is very comprehensive. It gathers every single detail you could possibly need to submit a paper to any journal, not just us. I would encourage you to think about it as a tool. So don't be intimidated. Take it slowly, section by section. We're going to go through the most important bits of it. And again, think of it as a tool that's going to help ensure that you have every single bit of information you need to submit your paper to this journal. That will ensure that you aren't getting delayed by missing information, and it can also alert you to potential issues that could cause delays. So we're going to talk about some of those in a minute. So this is the first section. So section 1 is basically kind of the general information about your manuscript. So the title, keywords, etc. The most important section, or the most important bits of this for screening purposes, is section 1.1, where you've got information about the corresponding author. And you just want to make sure the red arrows there indicate the most important information to make sure you are not missing. So the name of the corresponding author, their contact information, a phone number is a really good idea. The publisher will call if there's any problems. It's a good way to eliminate issues before they become a big problem. Make sure you have an email there, and then the physical address, including the country. The next section, so I've skipped a couple here. The next most important section for us is section 4, which is where you enter all the information about your authors. There's space for 10 authors. If you have more than that, you can complete and upload more than one form. Each author must have their own section completed for this, and make sure that you have them in the right order. Same order that you have on your title page. So as I said, there's one section for each author. You want to make sure you have all of the person's names. And if you come from a culture that typically has the surname or the family name first, just double check, because this is an English speaking context for our journal. And so we typically do first name, middle names, and then surnames or family names. So make sure that those are correct in this form, because this is the legal document that the publisher uses as the official record of your authors, etc. So make sure this is correct. This is what they will refer to, not your title page and not what's on the platform. It is a good idea to have a phone number for your authors if possible. We must have an email and what is referred to as an ORCID, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a moment. And then each author must have at least one affiliation. You can record up to 3 here, but everyone must have at least one. The lower part of each block is devoted to outlining what each author has contributed to the article you're submitting. And I'm going to talk about that in some detail. This must be completed. Please do not leave it blank. Okay. So for authorship guidelines, AJLM uses the guidance that is put out by the International Committee of Medical Journal Editors, or ICMJE, and there's a link at the bottom of the screen to the complete information that they have published on their guidelines that we have based ours off of. So what's in the table on your screen right now is kind of a summary of what those guidelines say. So there are 4 different roles that every author, in order to qualify for authorship, each person must have a contribution in each of these areas. So role number 1, scientific, 2 is writing, and then 3 and 4, final approval and agreement to be accountable. Now the form, the ADCL form, does not include entries for the bottom 2. So roles 3 and 4 are not on that form. It's only asking about 1 and 2. And I've copied the checkboxes from the form into my table here. Their order is not quite the same, but I think this displays it a little better. You can see each author must have at least 1 scientific contribution. So at least one of the checkboxes for those roles must be checked in the author block for each author. And every author must also have a writing contribution. We could have an entire webinar on this, so I'm not going to go into any more detail on this. Again, you've got the ICMJE guidelines, and we perhaps will have a webinar in the future on this, but that's what we're going to say about it today. For the ORCID, and if you're in South Africa, I think people typically say ORCID, you may spell it out. In any case, this stands for Open Researcher and Contributor ID. And basically, it's a unique identifier for people who are making contributions to science in various fields. And as it says on your screen there, it ensures that if you are someone doing this, that you are uniquely identified and connected to your contributions across disciplines, borders, and time. So it's a nice thing to have. It makes sure that all of your work is attributed to you. They are free. And you must have one. The publisher requires it at the time of submission for every author on a paper submitted to AJLM. And again, their website is right there if you'd like more information on that. So back to the submission form. Section 5 is acknowledgements and disclosures. So for acknowledgements and disclaimers, that's the top section and the bottom section on this screenshot. These are not required by the publisher. The other sections indicated by the arrows are the author contribution statements should align with what you've said in section 4 for each author, but this is a narrative format. This is what's actually published with your paper if it's accepted. And I'm going to talk about the others in a moment and what they are very briefly. Don't leave these blank. That will cause a delay when it gets to us. And if you need more information, there's our author submission guidelines outline what we're looking for in some of these sections. So as far as competing interests, which are also called or conflicts of interest, this is when there's a potential for bias based on some other role that people may have. The financial one is the one that's typically the easiest to kind of demonstrate. Say you're running a drug trial, but you own the company that makes the drug. That would be a financial conflict of interest. You just want to make sure that you disclose all of these things for any co-author who has one at the time of submission. For disclaimers, these are typically statements required by employers or funders or governments, and they typically will go along the lines of the ideas expressed in this paper are the author's own and do not reflect those of the government, donor, whatever. Again, that's something you'd want to check with your employer or donor. So for funding statements, most of the authors for AJLM fund their own research, but funders, outside funders, typically require authors to state the source. So you'd want to name the donor and grant numbers, that kind of thing. Please don't leave this blank because ASLM and AJLM track this, especially if you are self-funded. We want to know about that. So data availability is another one where there's quite a lot of research area-specific standards for depositing research data that you've generated, like genetics data or code or things like that. That's something that experts in your field would have set up and created the standards for. We do require a statement, especially for an original research article. There's certain things that you need to say. So the statement is required. There's examples on our website, on the author submissions guidelines, and much more detail about what those things are. So section 6, this is additional policy disclosures, and there's several things. The most important one, this is where you tell us about the ethics approvals for your study. And we actually do have a webinar planned, I think in June, to go over ethical conduct of research in detail. So I'm not going to say too much about that, other than any research involving human subjects, even if it's just data from lab records or something like that, or research involving animals. All of this requires prior approval before you start your work from an institutional ethics committee, and we must have documentation of that. So that's what this section is asking for, especially those bottom 3 boxes. So in this section, you just want to, if it doesn't apply to your study, you check the box in the far left corner. If it does, you check the box in the middle. And if you have checked a box in the middle, there's a corresponding section that goes along with it, which is my next slide. This is one example. This is probably the most common for AJLM articles. This is involvement of human research subjects or participants in your research. The top box, you can copy and paste the ethics statement that should be in your manuscript already into the box there. We also need to see your ethical clearance number and the date that it was that you received that. And then there is the checkbox there that you are agreeing to upload your documentation. So we need a copy of your approval certificate or letter from your ethics committee saying that you have approval to do the study. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that should look like in a moment. We are going to move on to the submission platform. So once you have completed your ADCL form, you are all ready to go. You go back to our website, and if you don't have an account, you create one, and then you click on Login. That will bring you to your user homepage, and somewhere on that page you should see a link in brackets like it shows on the screen that says New Submission. And that, when you click on it, will bring you to the very first page of the submission process. And there is a video that demonstrates how to use this platform. The platform is called OJS, which stands for Open Journal Systems. And it is a freeware platform that was put out originally by the University of Calgary in Canada, and I think our publisher has taken it and developed it. It's got a lot more bells and whistles than the original version. So the video is put out by the University of Calgary, and it's quite basic. It doesn't look exactly like this, but it will walk you through all the sort of essential steps of submitting. So once you've started, the first screen called Starting the Submission is going to collect some important information and then tell you also about policies, legal notices, fees. There's a checklist for items and actions, and then there's a box if you need to enter messages to the editor, you do that there. It's quite a long screen. I'm only showing you part of it. One of the most important sections is 1.2, where you select the section or article type of your journal. So there's a drop-down menu. I'm going to show you what the submission platform looks like for the original research article, because that's the most common type of article that we get. And I'm not going to show you too much more detail on that just in the interest of time, but I am going to point out there is language on there about article processing charges. Now, at the present moment, AJLM does not cover or does not charge article processing fees. All fees to publish and read the journal are covered by ASLM at the moment. So the language on the website is a little confusing. Just know that we don't charge it, and that becomes clear later on in the process. So once you've completed step 1, and I think there's a button that says continue, you go to step 2, which is uploading your manuscript. And there is literally only one step in this on this screen. It's you just upload your blinded manuscript. So AJLM has a blinded peer review process, a double-blind process, which means the authors don't know who the reviewers are and the reviewers do not know who the authors are. So the most important thing to do is just remove your title page from this version. The publisher will actually go through and remove any other mentions that might identify the authors from the actual body of the manuscript, including the references. So just remove your title page, upload the file, and that's sufficient for this step. So step 3 is where you'll spend most of your time. This is where you enter your authors and the other metadata. Now, metadata is all of the information that's associated with your manuscript that is not the main text, your tables, figures, etc., and your references. So this is your authors, the title, the abstract, keywords, all of that stuff goes on this page. And the first section is just the authors. It should automatically enter the person doing the submitting, who should be the corresponding author. And then you can add authors, as many other authors as you need. Make sure this is filled out completely and that it matches your title page and it matches your ADCL form. Yeah, and I think, yeah, that's it for that one. Okay, so after you've done that, you go to step 4. Which is uploading your supplementary files. Now, the screenshot on the left side of your screen where it says required file types, this will change depending on the type of article that you have entered on the first screen. So what it's showing you here is the required file types for original research articles. You can see there's 3 things there. The first one is the ADCL form, the second one is the ethical clearance, and then your unblinded manuscript, which would be your manuscript with all of the authors and identifiers in it. The other things you might want to upload here could be original figure files, supplementary materials like tables, figures, or raw data, and other things that you have on the list there. So as you upload the required files, so when you first load the screen, those will be red. As you upload them, they turn green. Don't forget to do this, and don't substitute required files with let's say, a letter. Just make sure you have the right content for the file type that you've designated that you're uploading. So this is the last screen. Step 5 is confirmation. It will show you all of the files you've uploaded. So you just want to make sure everything you've uploaded is there. I think so. Sometimes we get submissions that have no manuscript file, and I suspect that's a connection issue, an internet connection issue. The file doesn't completely upload. So just make sure that you have something that says submission file with an actual, that it shows that there's a file uploaded there. Section 5.2 is where I think this is the clearest statement that you do not need to pay. It's just there. You don't have to do anything, but you can read that and sort of be reassured we're not going to charge you anything. And then finally, the last thing you have to do is select a sustainable development goal. There's a drop-down list, and I think these are the UN's sustainable development goals. And I think the one that typically applies for AJLM is goal 3, which is good health and well-being. Okay, so some of the most common things we see that tend to stop you in your tracks, and you get a red light, and we have to either ask you or you get rejected without review. So for the submission form, the author list causes a lot of problems. So make sure you have entered all of the authors on the ADCL form and in the platform. Make sure the name orders are the same between all 3 of those places, your title page, the ADCL, the platform. They should all match for all of these things. The order should be the same. The corresponding authors should be the same. Make sure you're not missing any ORCIDs. Make sure you're not missing any email addresses. For section 5, don't leave those sections blank, as we mentioned, and make sure that you fill out the ethics declaration completely. For the submission platform, make sure you aren't missing your manuscript file. That's just double check that in step 5 that you actually have a file there. Make sure you're not missing tables, figures, or supplementary items that you may have mentioned in your manuscript. So if you have referenced a table 5 in your results section, make sure that table 5 is actually in your manuscript or that it's been uploaded separately. Also make sure that your reference list is not missing. That happens occasionally. So just double check that it's there. For the submission platform, sometimes people do not upload the ethical clearance at all. They'll just upload a document with a statement in it. That is not sufficient. It won't get you through. So for the ethical clearance documentation to be acceptable, I have a list of criteria there. I'll just go over those briefly. It's very, very important. It must be the certificate, the approval letter, the waiver that is on the official ethics committee letterhead. It must be the official document. It can't be an email or anything like that. It must be legible. If you only have a hard copy and you take a picture with your phone, that's totally fine as long as we can read it. But if it's pixelated or blurry, we'll have to ask you to do it again. So please make sure it is readable. Make sure that it has a date. It shows the title of the study, which should be related to the topic of your manuscript. At least one of your co-authors should be on the application as the PI or principal investigator. And it must say something about participant consent requirements if that's relevant. The publisher requires that it be in English, so if it's not, please be prepared to provide a translation. In practice, I can read French and German, and I have Google Translate for everything else, so you will need an English translation, but if all you have is a native language, is a non-English version, that's also fine. Also make sure that if you have a multi-center research study or a multi-country research study, that you include all of the ethical clearance. You upload each of them for each location that's involved in the study you're reporting. That is also required. Okay, and this I think is my last slide. This is just a list of all of the resources that we've mentioned throughout my part of the presentation, where you can find more information, etc. And I think I will hand it back to Dr. Makhaola at this time. So thank you all for your attention. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Bethany. And thank you very much, participants. It's been a very busy Q&A. I'll go into the key messages and then we'll come back. I'll try to answer as many questions as possible, but we'll come back to the remaining questions. So in summary, we've talked about the African Society of Laboratory Medicine, whose main goal is to advance laboratory profession, practice, science, and network. And let us remember that data is the lifeblood for every program and innovation. And we do scientific publications to increase visibility and impact of research. And the presentations that have just finished, we're talking about the African Journal of Laboratory Medicine, which has been created as a platform for scientific information exchange. We are still emphasizing that this is an open source journal, which means it's free to authors, it's free to readers. And scientific manuscript publication is built on integrity, on reliability, quality, and traceability. Somebody has commented to say, why don't we cut the forms that we have to fill? But we need to collect as much information that will enable us to know who did the work, how they did it. Did they also get the necessary approval to do that research? And all publications undergo rigorous peer review. This is double-blinded, which means you don't know the person that is reviewing for you. You also do not know who you are reviewing for. And there are some elements or requirements that we take as necessary. For example, ethical clearance. Even if you are using prospective data, even if you are using, somebody was talking about indicators from the program, you need to submit your protocol to the local authorities. They are the ones that make a determination of whether you undergo rigorous review ethical clearance, or whether they give you a waiver. She's also talked about an ORCID. This is very important because it also allows people to track your work. Even you yourself as an individual, you are able to enter that number and pull all your publications within one go. We need to pay attention to conflict of interest. Metadata, I've already talked about that, why it's important for us to collect that. We can go to the next slide. Yes. So this is just more information. We will be sharing these slides with you at the end of the presentation. It's about the African Journal of Laboratory Medicine. Some were asking, what areas do we cover? We have clinical chemistry, drug monitoring, toxicology, infectious diseases, and so on. And we are also happy to announce that we have openings for reviewers. We have openings for editors. If you are interested, you can send your qualifications. Normally, we are looking for experts in those areas, in those different areas. Genomics is still our new area, anatomical pathology, and emerging technologies. That's the use of AIs in laboratory medicine. We have the greatest need in those areas. So please get in touch and let us work together to advance laboratory medicine in Africa. We also have membership packages. There is a website that is provided there. The first webinar like this one and the next one, they are going to be free to the public, but upcoming webinars, we will be restricting them to our members so that we have a group that we can work with. There will be also be more opportunities than just the webinars. If you are a member, you get to get some discounts when you attend conferences. There's an opportunity for you to be paired with mentors in your areas. So we are appealing to you, even students. We have a membership package for students. We are appealing to you to join ASLM as members. The last slide is on the ASLM Ambassador Program. This one is exclusive to laboratory medicine stakeholders, and this is also an initiative to enhance the visibility, the impact, and the reach of ASLM. We still have a lot of people that don't know about ASLM. So if you are an ambassador in your country or in your region, you are there to tell people about ASLM, but you also gain professional recognition. You are able to network with others. There are membership perks. You are promoting ASLM. So there are perks that go along with that. And there are relevant skills and experience, justification. You need to put up why you are interested in being the ambassador. So there is an email there. We will be sharing these slides so that you will get those email addresses and get in touch with us. I believe that's the end of our slides, and thank you very, very much for being so attentive. And one of the questions, Bethany, that has come over and over on the Q&A was about having one edition a year. I think it's confusing people. The assumption is that all the manuscripts, for example, that we collect in 2024, they only wait for one date, and that's when they are going to be published. Maybe if you can just explain what having one edition in a year means. Thanks,
Okay,
and
yeah.
over, and then we'll open for more questions.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Makhaola. Yeah, so what we mean by that is we have one regular issue per year, which collects all of the general submissions to the journal. So if it isn't being published as part of a special issue, which is focused on a specific topic, it's just published in the regular issue. But articles are published as soon as they are ready. So if you submit an article in January, we accept it in April, and it is gets through production and is ready to publish in June, it gets published in June. We don't wait for a specific date. You don't have to wait till the end of the year. It's just published as soon as it's ready. So I hope that answers that question.
Yes, I believe it does. I had also attempted to answer it. There are more questions, perhaps if you can also look at the Q&A. The first one for you, Prof. It says, can more than one author share first authorship?
Yes, indeed. We've had many cases. In fact, even when I publish, I can be a co-author. In other words, I can share the first authorship. All you have to do is when you are submitting, you actually state that there are two first authors. So you can do so.
Thank you very much. I think that answers it. And then Bethany, there's a question on average, how long is the review process? What's the average turnaround time for a completed review from the point of submission? Bethany, you can take that one. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, thank you very much. That's a good question, and always, the biggest concern of authors. It's also our biggest concern. We would like for the answer to be as quickly as possible. However, we're a small journal, and it's difficult to get reviewers sometimes. The publisher's target is actually 45 days from the time of submission. I think our latest average is more like 140, so it is quite a bit longer than that. But we are bringing it down. It is down really, really like 50% from a few years ago, and we were overwhelmed with COVID submissions, and it took a very long time. So it is coming down. That is really dependent on having responsive reviewers and enough section editors to handle the volume of submissions. And as you've seen, our submissions have really increased dramatically since 2020, and we're slowly adding more section editors. And more reviewers, and I think we are very successfully getting things through quite quickly. These days, we have many that are under 30 days. The last 6 months or so has seen a really vast improvement, and especially since Professor Erasmus took over, I think things have sped up a little bit. Prof, do you want to say anything to that?
Yes, indeed. One of our strategic initiatives is to reduce the turnaround time, and it's a teamwork. But I think it's also important for our potential authors to understand that there is a big challenge in getting reviewers. And so we have actually taken a decision in AJLM. If an article has been lying in the platform for more than 100 days due to a lack of reviewers, we would like to release the article back to the authors. The second action we have taken in the last couple of months is to increase the number of section editors. So we still have room for more section editors, and we are appealing to our colleagues out there who are experts in their respective areas to please apply to the AJLM to be considered as potential section editors in the fields that were displayed earlier on, the 9 areas. And the other thing we are also appealing is for us to add reviewers to our database. This is very, very important because, as Bethany said, that's our greatest challenge. And if we can get reviewers who can review within 4 weeks, I tell you, our turnaround time would half to what we have at the moment. So that's our biggest challenge. Yes, I hope that answers your question.
So, Prof, you are looking for reviewers. What do I need to be a reviewer? Like, is there a minimum qualification,
Yes, that
experience?
yes,
I'm
that
asking on their behalf because some are already saying send the form, so they need to send with knowledge. What are you looking for?
yes. So that's an important question, and I think for a reviewer, we need to have a certain level of expertise. So a reviewer should be, for one, should be well qualified. Two, though this is not necessary, I'm talking about the next point, is to have a good record of publication. So if you have a number of publications, your chances of becoming a reviewer are considerably enhanced. But that does not mean that potential reviewers potential applicants who don't have a good record of publications will not be considered. So it also depends on the need, on the areas that we require reviewers for. So, for example, anatomical pathology, we don't have many reviewers. Also, for non communicable diseases, we don't have many reviewers. We are also looking for more reviewers in microbiology and infectious diseases. So, really, we will really welcome reviewers from our colleagues out there. So, if you think you are qualified, you have expertise in a particular area, you have some evidence of publication, and sometimes if you have also supervised at the master's and doctoral levels, you could also be considered. So it's really, you might say, a collection of various qualifications that will enhance your in being considered as a reviewer. Over to you, Dr. Makhaola.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm just the average turnaround time for completed review from the point of submission. I think Bethany has answered that one. The next question is, how else can grammar be checked? I used Grammarly, but I was told to check my grammar. Can you suggest no fee platform? Bethany, I don't know if you know any.
Yes. So that's a good question. I saw that in the chat, and I've been trying to think how to answer it succinctly. So there is an organization called AuthorAid. It's a group of volunteers who will take a look at your manuscript, and some of them are English language editors. We do suggest that to folks when they, if they get a rejection for English. It sort of depends. Yeah, no fee. Finding someone who will do it for free is difficult. You can try colleagues if they're native English speakers, and you can get them to take a look and correct it, and just get it to the point where it can get through peer review. We will try and correct it as much as we can. Our technical editors will do that, but it does have to be at a certain level. If it's going to impact the opinions of the peer reviewers, we probably won't send it, just because we don't want you kind of penalized for that, if we can prevent it. So I hope I think that might be a good topic for a webinar in the future, possibly. So back to you.
Thank you very much. We have 6 minutes. I don't know if we have any last burning questions. Maybe you haven't typed your question on the chat, but you want to ask it live. You can raise your hand and they will open for you to ask your question.
So, if I might just comment,
Okay.
I think I forgot to mention that AJLM is accredited by the Department of by DHET. It's also accredited by the Web of Science as well as Scopus. I think that's important. And AJLM is also a member of the Directory of Open Access Journals, what we call as DOAJ. And a little secret I just want on a lighter note. You might have noticed I call our managing editor Mrs. Brahma, and that's because I have included her initials. So she's Bethanie Rama, so I call her Brahma. So just on a lighter note, you might be wondering who is Mrs. Brahma. Over to you, Dr. Makhaola.
Thank you very much. I see 3 hands. I can't see your names. Can you unmute? Fitum, are you able to assist them? The ones with their hands up. We only have 4 minutes now, so
yeah, they can speak now.
Yes, please go ahead and be brief because we are almost out of time. Thank you.
Maybe he's muted, or could be. That's why we can't hear anything at the moment.
Yes, I can't hear anyone. Okay, James Mdulu, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, please go ahead. Thank you.
Yes, I was trying to seek some clarification. If someone with doing a master's in public health with a bachelor of degree in medical sciences can publish in your journal.
The question
Can
is,
you hear
can
me?
you publish your bachelor's degree project?
You have a degree in medical laboratory sciences.
Yes, sir.
And you are pursuing a master's in public health epidemiology. Can you publish your thesis in the ASLM journal?
I can answer that. So yes, definitely. If it's within scope of the journal, what you want to do though, please don't submit your master's degree thesis in its entirety. We would need you to reformat that as a research article, and you can look at the author submission guidelines to provide guidance on what that should look like. So previous publication as a master's thesis it's not considered previous publications for the purposes of publishing the research in a peer-reviewed format. So it will show up in the plagiarism checker, but we usually will exclude it because it's not considered a duplicate. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, thank you. So you need to generate a manuscript out of your thesis work and submit it for publication. Unfortunately, we only have 2 minutes, so I'm going to be closing the session. We have some voting. I think you are already voting and to evaluating the session. We do have some questions that were not answered. As we share the slides, we will extract these and include them as Q&A and provide answers for those. And thank you very much for having attended this session. We are looking forward to engaging with you either as members, as ambassadors, as our reviewers, as our authors. So we do encourage you to subscribe even to our social media platforms so that you can receive information regularly from ASLM. And thank you very much, our presenters. Thank you, our IT team, for making this possible. Have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye.
Bye then.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Bye.